Hello, it's Gabriele Nicolet from SpeechKids, where we teach little kids to talk and help parents understand their little kids. And today I'm going to talk to Sue Simmons. Hello, Sue.
Hello, Gabriele. Nice to be with you.
Thank you for coming. Would you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. I am the founder of Equinox Family Consulting. I am an autism mom. My son is now 23. He was diagnosed at age 5, and my mess is now my message. And I've been at this for 15 plus years. I work with families, dedicated families of children with autism and neurodevelopmental challenges, and I transform their emotional chaos into a calm connection. And my objective is to give them a happier tomorrow and a brighter future.
Wow. And so obviously you came to this work through your son. What was going on then? And how did you come to this work? So what's the evolution there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I should predicate this all by saying that my son was diagnosed long enough ago that I was not, it wasn't suggested to me that I be looking at my son's autism as behavior. All of my work is done through the lens of development. So how did autism derail my son's development? And how did that derailment impact his development, his ability to process information, his sensory capacities, and how does all of that show up as behavior? So I see behavior as what we see on the top of that developmental iceberg. Okay, so behavior is communication merely.
And just for anybody watching, this is, I'm going to just lay it out there. Applied behavioral analysis is a treatment program that is used with very good research behind it in terms of treating behaviors associated with autism. But Sue, it sounds like you are more associated with some other treatment modalities in autism. And in particular, you're certified in something else, aren't you?
Yeah, I let go of my certification as a relationship development intervention practitioner. I still do that kind of work, but I, by choice, decided to let go of my certification 3 years ago. But I have worked in that realm for 14, 15 years. I also am a certified emotional success coach and emotional freedom practitioner. So as I support parents to understand how to parent their kids, because science is proving that the parent-child relationship is the pathway to improving our children's social, emotional, and cognitive growth.
And then the behavior comes along, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. So, my biggest message is that moms have been kicked to the curb by our system. And most of the moms, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of them over the years, they are such sweet and kind people that they wouldn't say shit if their mouth was full of it. Well, guess what? I'm not one of those I'm a wonderful, sweet person, but I will say shit if my mouth is full of it. And it breaks my heart to see families ripped apart, teenagers living on the streets, because they don't have the benefit of that emotional connection with their child.
And that's really at the heart of everything. I mean, so much of what we do at our practice is facilitating that relationship first. I actually don't care, and I'm a speech therapist. I actually
Oh,
don't care very much if you can say a perfect S. What I care about, or even if you form complete sentences or speak verbally, what I care
yeah.
about is, are you seen by your parent? Does your parent understand you?
Yes.
Are you having a loving and close relationship with
Yes.
your
Yes.
child, between the parent and the child?
Yes.
And in autism,
Yes.
that becomes very, very difficult, because so much
Yeah.
of what's happening seems like a rejection of any kind of regular way of expressing affection. And so how do you help parents understand sort of what's going on in autism, and not take it personally, maybe?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So, in order to take it personally, one would have to assume that the child is doing it with intent,
Mm.
right? So, a typical child is born with what we call a growth seeking mindset. So, little ones, and as they get older, up till the teen years, can't get enough of their parents, right? Because they are the gateway to the universe of being a grown up, right?
And any parent of a 3-year-old will say, yeah, they think I'm the universe.
Exactly, right? That's when it's like, you know.
Yeah.
But kids with autism and neurodevelopmental challenges, because of the wiring in the brain being different, like think about a computer with a different operating system.
Mm.
Not bad, not wrong, just different, right? If that operating system is different, then the computer itself will operate differently. Okay? Doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. It's just different.
Mm.
So that's where neurodiversity comes in, right?
Mhm.
And so without that, so what happens is this growth seeking mindset um, does not develop the same way.
Mm.
And so because these well-intended parents who want so badly to connect with their child, they keep trying anything they can until they give up. um, the child is getting more and more and more freaked out
Mhm.
because they don't process information the same way,
Mhm.
right? So but the beautiful solution to this problem, well, not the solution but the pathway to the solution, is that the brain is plastic. So with the right stimulation at the right time, the brain changes. And that's what I do. I coach parents to understand what's going on for their child, so that I mold a connection between parents and child.
And how do you do that? Do you see the child? Do you just hang out with the parents? What's the
I did do it all virtually. I
Mhm.
mean, now I normally I would go to the family and do an assessment,
Mhm.
and that assessment would look like, how do they interact? What's the child bringing to the table? What's the parent bringing to the table? Do either of them persevere? How do they respond to one another? But then I've just been doing this for so long, it's like my superpower. So I help parents learn how to understand autism through the lens of development,
Mhm.
so that behavior is communication, not behavior is not disrespect.
Mhm.
Behavior is overwhelm.
Oh, that's a big one, isn't it?
It's huge. And hey, I've told this story so many times about when my son was 3.5, and because I wanted so much to connect with him, I got up super early and made a big crock pot of spaghetti sauce early in the morning, right? And so when we got home from swimming lessons and you know music classes and all this stuff, I was trying to do the right thing for my child. He got up in the kitchen counter and looked at me as I walked in the kitchen, and I said, "Chase, what are you doing, hon?" And he looked at me and smiled, and then proceeded to push the crock pot off the counter on to the floor.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
I know. And that's when, at that time I was married to a veterinarian. So we had 5 dogs.
Oh
Okay,
God.
now you have 5 dogs burning their mouths on, boiling spaghetti sauce.
Oh, wow. That's a
That's
tipping
a
point.
shit show.
A literal
Yeah,
tipping point.
yeah. So I don't know if that helps, but yeah, I
Wow.
trust me, and that's why we moms, until we get it, are our stress levels, are equivalent to that of combat soldiers, proven by research. We feel like, we are failing our children. We feel like we are incompetent, and the list goes on. No wonder we're all stressed out.
Well, and those things are happening, those unusual, hard to deal with things are happening every day, or they're happening, you can tell that story to a parent of a neurotypical child and they'll laugh and say, oh yeah, my son did the same thing last week. Well,
Oh yeah, no,
that's all
you
fine and
don't get
good
it.
if that's happening once in any lifetime.
Yeah,
And then you have informed the child how this works and it never happens again. Whereas a child with autism is doing things like that, or any child with a neurological difference.
yeah,
It's more, it's harder, it's
yeah,
longer.
yeah.
Um, and
And
parents of neurotypical children, they don't get it always.
no, and they can't be expected to, right? Parenting is hard enough, and it's just that same thing. If you haven't walked a mile in my moccasins or whatever, you can't get it. It's like, a white person cannot empathize with a black person because they haven't lived the same experience,
Experiences.
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they are not trying to be empathetic.
Right.
But
Yeah.
see, the thing that people don't understand is that between parents and typical children, there are like 3 key elements of a guiding relationship. So there's kind of like an emotional feedback loop. So, as I'm watching you, what I expect to be seeing soon is you going, Sue, you're talking too much.
I'm loving this. We're going to keep
Okay.
going.
So there's that feedback loop, right? There's the child's ability to borrow the parent's perspective, right? Like, oops, am I in trouble? Or gotcha, or right? So there's that, I know what's going on for you, and vice versa. And then there's resilience, right? And so that's where that massive breakdown between parent and child comes in. And that's why parents of typical kids can't possibly be expected to understand, right, what it's like for a parent of an atypical
But I think
child.
sometimes what happens is parents of differently wired or neurologically different kids, neurodiverse children, they get confused because they get all these conflicting messages. They know
Totally.
their child is harder to parent, but they don't always understand how or why. And so it can sometimes take, well, in your case, it was age 5.
And I was lucky because my son was diagnosed back then with Asperger's, which is no longer a diagnosis, right? But that's because I made a commitment to my son that I was not going to let his life go down the toilet. And the statistics are grim.
Yeah.
And not every parent has it's a matter of choice, Yeah. Are you willing to get out of your comfort zone, and be willing to fail for the sake of your child's future? I was.
Well, and that's a moment too, isn't it? I mean, depending on who we listen to and what we believe, our children chose us for a reason. And isn't that an interesting moment?
It sure is. It sure is. Yeah.
So when somebody works with you, what happens for them? What's the trajectory in a nutshell?
It depends on whether they're like, I have sort of the different steps to working with me, right? So if you want a little appetizer serving, you can do my Positive Parenting for Neuro-Diverse Families program, which is launching in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, exciting.
It's a very low price. Like, it's, I think, $29 a month. We're
Okay.
doing this over so that it's like we're trying to make it ridiculously accessible.
Love it. Is there a website for that?
It will be on the website in a week or so, but Equinox Family Consulting.com.
Perfect.
Right now the website's all being Karen is behind the scenes doing all of her, voodoo.
Yeah.
Whatever she does. Then the next step up is better behavior and beyond. So essentially the first step is always, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
That's not what I thought. Why didn't they tell me that? And that, of course, is the $1 million question, which we won't talk about, Gabriele.
Yes.
Then it's the next step is, I can. They realize that they have way more power than they have been told they have. Okay, and I want to preface what I'm saying by acknowledging that every practitioner in this field is well intended and means no harm. Right? So I'm not trying to diss anybody. It's just that I think what I do is kind of way ahead of.
Well, and here's the other thing. People are ready for different things at different stages of their lives.
Absolutely.
Right? And so by the time people find their way to you, they're ready for you. And before they find you, they're not ready, or something else is working. And that's okay.
Yeah.
There's a reason. I always think there's a reason for all the things.
You got it. Right. And I'm also, like every parent loves their child, or they should not be a parent if they don't, but I'm with you. So the next step is showing up in the face of behavior in a different way. So once it's like, I love Wayne Dyer, when you see, how's that go again? I sometimes get it mucked up. When the things when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Yeah. So when you can see your child's behavior as your child is having a hard time not giving you a hard time, you can show up with compassion. Yeah. And as soon as you do, because your child is a human, not a Martian, your child will respond differently. And that is the beginning.
Wow. I love it.
And then, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Love it. Okay. So
change happens fast.
EquinoxFamilyConsulting.com. Check that out to find more about Sue and her membership program that's coming up.
Can I just share one last little thing? Why the name Equinox?
Why the name Equinox?
Okay. So the equinox occurs twice a year. And it is when there's one in the spring and one in the fall. And it is when there are equal amounts of light and dark. And I chose the name because my mission is to give children, neurodiverse children and their families, an equal opportunity at quality of life.
It's beautiful. All right. Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Yeah, I know. I could talk to you all day.
All day.
And night.
We'll do it again. And night. That's right. Yeah. All right. Take care.
Okay. Thanks, Gabriele.